Joe, in the movie we watched this week, Tom Cruise lives the day over and over again, kind of Groundhog's Day style. Is there a day in your life that you wish you could live over and over again?
That's a good question. There are a lot of days I don't want to live over again, that's for sure. But hang on, I need to grab something from the fridge. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Joe, are you okay? Joe, in the movie we watched this week, Tom Cruise lives the same day over and over again. Has there ever been a day that you wanted to live over and over again?
You know, there are a lot of days I don't want to live over again, but hold on. I need to run to my fridge for a second. Hold on.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Joe, in the movie we watched this week, let's just get to the show.
All right.
I'm going to tell you a story. At first, it's going to sound ridiculous. But the longer I talk,
We have to find the keys.
the more rational it's going to appear.
How many times have we been here?
For me, it's been an eternity. I die within 5 minutes of landing on that beach, along with every other soldier.
What happened to you happened to me. You hijacked their power.
How do I control it?
You have to die. Every day. Keep coming here and I'll train you.
I'm not a soldier.
Of course you're not. You're a weapon. They want to conquer the rest of the world. Unless you change the outcome.
We are not equipped for what's out there.
How many times have we been here? What are you not telling me?
It's going to be dark in a few hours.
We should just reset.
Whoa!
The year is 2014. We are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Edge of Tomorrow. Last month, Joe, we're talking about Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, Bill Paxton, Brendan Gleeson in a Doug Liman film. The first movie that Tom Cruise and Doug Liman worked together on. The fifth one that he and Christopher McQuarrie worked together on. Joe Sky Tucker, what makes Edge of Tomorrow a great bad movie?
This is going to be a hard one for me because I don't know if this is a bad movie. I've watched it now multiple times and it's really, really good. Yeah, there's so much. It's well written.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting story. We kind of have Tom Cruise playing a character he doesn't always play, especially in the beginning where he's not the best at something.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of comes in, he's a cocky media PR person and gets conscripted into the army and the attack is the next day. And so he doesn't know what he's doing. It is Groundhog Day style. So if you don't like those movies, I guess that would make it a bad movie. But there are just some amazing action sequences in it. The first action sequence is just beautiful. There are all these great D-Day and World War II parallels within it that are really fun. It's really well done. There are a lot of CGI bad guys in this, but it's so well animated that you don't really notice it and feel it the way you do in some other movies where it's clearly them shooting at a tennis ball on a screen. So the bad parts of this movie, I struggled a little bit with them doing basically the same thing over and over again on like how they were trying to live the day. Like they were going to the same beach and trying to get through it.
Sure.
When I felt like there were other options that they could have tried that they kind of get into towards the end when they go off script instead of trying to attack the aliens in the middle of the attack that they know is coming. I wouldn't have been upset with a little more backstory, a little bit more lead up of Tom Cruise's character. I almost never say that because I love kind of starting in the middle of the action. But a little bit more I could have taken.
Yep.
And this is just a nitpicky one for me, but I feel like the ending is just a little too happy.
Uh-huh.
I wish that it had ended when basically both our main characters, Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise, save the day, but die, but kill the... Like that was like the perfect ending. So
you wanted a Rogue One?
I wanted a Rogue One. Yeah. Everybody dies. Nobody changes. Yeah.
Am I hearing you right that there's a chance that this isn't a great bad movie? Have we, in the last couple episodes, gotten so close to the flame that we are now just on fire, where we have just crossed the line from great bad movies into our first official episode of great movies? Is that what you're saying?
It's really possible. I'd love to hear your take. So, Greg Swinehart, what is your thoughts on this being a great bad movie?
I don't think this is a great bad movie. I think the only way that you can say that this is a great bad movie is I went into this movie 10 years ago with very low expectations because it looked really stupid. And I was kind of like, wow, this is no complaints, no notes. That was a great movie. And so I think the only way you could say that this is a bad movie is that the expectations for it were low, but it exceeds even rewatch expectations. This is probably the fourth time I've seen it. And I took zero notes and I was just so into it. And then I had to pause it, like 2/3 through. And I was kind of like, I don't have anything to make fun of here. I have just really enjoyed this movie. So I think, this has happened to us in the past where we've gotten a little close in episodes that we've released. We've definitely recorded episodes that haven't been released yet where we realized, oh, this wasn't a great bad movie. And so I think this is just officially our first release of great movies.
I tend to agree. I had the same experience when I was watching it, and I was so into the movie that I take notes usually when I watch them throughout the movie, and I notice the drinking games and those sorts of things. And I got to a similar point. I was like, I don't have any drinking games right now.
Yeah.
What's happening? I buckled down and found some. So don't worry,
okay,
our dear listener.
It's still an episode.
It's still an episode. We're still going to go through the motions on this.
Sure.
But it is a really well done, well written, well acted movie. It's beautiful. I think some of the action sequences are great, especially, as I said, that first scene on the beach.
Yeah.
That you kind of get multiple perspectives of as the movie progresses, which is awesome. It's funny. That's the other piece it's a sneakily funny movie.
Yep.
They really utilize humor to kind of break up the tension at different points within it. There are some unexpected moments within it. And for a movie that the bad guy in it is just kind of faceless aliens that you just see only when they're about to kill Tom Cruise.
Yep.
They're really scary. And the antagonist isn't a character in the sense that we're used to, like Dennis Hopper from Speed last week as kind of the quintessential bad guy.
Yeah.
But you have them trying to solve the riddle of how to defeat them. I would say it takes the trope, the alien invasion trope, where there is only a very slim chance of success, and they figure it out. And, Independence Day uses this. The amazing movie that I'm blanking on with John Travolta that he did with Barry Pepper. Oh, my God. Battlefield Earth.
Oh, wow.
Uses this. So I feel embarrassed to even have Battlefield Earth and Edge of Tomorrow in the same sentence. But that's the kind of the aliens are coming. They're a much more powerful, sophisticated technological force. And, we have to use scrappy human ingenuity to get out of it. And to a certain degree, it follows that. But what it really gets into is how hard it is and how many chances and times they're trying to figure this out so that when you get to the end and they defeat the aliens, it doesn't feel like, well, that was just kind of total luck. It was a lot of work. And I was trying to add up and it was too hard. But there are some numbers they throw out of like how many times, because both Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise's character get caught in a time loop.
Yep.
We only see Tom Cruise's part, but my guess is somewhere between, 500 and 1,000 times they've tried this together, and so it's like that 1 in 1,000 time they get it. So I love this movie. It's great.
I don't think they ever actually say how many times he looped.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something like 28 times in the movie they show the day start over. And she said that she saw, what's his name, Hendrickson, something like that. They talk about some character that she saw die 300 times.
Right.
So I think those are the only numbers we actually get, but you have to assume it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
This is a super funny movie. In fact, the original script wasn't, it was pretty dark. And the guy who wrote it, his name isn't on the movie anymore because they changed it enough. But he was paid like $1 million for the script and it was pretty dark. And then they just really tried to add as much comedy as they could. And comedy, in fact, determined how the movie ended. They decided to follow what comedies do and end it on a better day.
Mhm.
And so it's because of the comedy they were trying to find that they got to that ending. This movie cost $175 million. So I think that's why it has a happy ending.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, like that's a very small quibble for me
Yeah.
as, and it says more about me as a person probably than anything else. I'm not mad that they ended it on a happy note, and how they do it. There's some nice symmetry to it. Like the movie begins and ends kind of with the same shot and the same moment.
Yeah.
So all of that, it's really well done.
Yep.
I was like ready for them to like credits rolling when they kill the bad guy because they break the time loop, and so you shouldn't go back to the beginning of the loop. Is basically was my thought.
Right.
But I can't fault. I mean, it's a very minor quibble. Again, this movie is so well done, and it's so fun. And it was. I saw this maybe a year ago or so.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it, I had the same kind of thought when it came out. I was like,
Oh,
you
it looked so stupid.
yeah.
And if you look at the best movies that have come out in our lifetimes, the expectations are low, usually. I don't know, go back to Die Hard. Why would Bruce Willis be good at an action movie? That looks horrible.
Yep.
10 years later, Johnny Mnemonic had come out, and we were like, we don't need another Keanu Reeves movie where it's the future. And then The Matrix comes out, and I had, people told me, you got to go see it. I was like, nah, he's already fooled me with Johnny Mnemonic. I'm not going to go see The Matrix. You should probably see The Matrix. Bruce Willis, again, he did that Mercury Rising movie with the kid in it, and I heard it was horrible, so I didn't go. And then the next year, he's in The Sixth Sense, or like pretty soon after that, he does that again. And with this movie, it had a couple things going against it. The year before, Tom Cruise had been in that film Oblivion,
which is awful, which we'll definitely for sure do.
We'll definitely get to it. It's a beautiful movie. Joe Kosinski, the guy who did Tron Legacy and Top Gun Maverick, made it, and it was okay.
It's nothing special.
Yeah.
It's one of our movies that would fit right in on this podcast.
Right. But also, like, do you remember that movie Elysium?
Yep.
With Matt Damon? That came out, I want to say the year before this. It had like the mech suits in it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that I had already tired of the mech suits by the time Edge of Tomorrow came out. People just love these suits so much.
Yeah.
It's just such a big deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, another one of those. So I was not interested in Tom Cruise doing another future movie after Oblivion. It was too soon. Too soon, Tom.
Yeah.
I was not ready for a mech suit movie. Who wants that? But it seemed to be getting some pretty good reviews. So I went to it and I was like, is it just me or was that great?
Yeah.
That was a great movie.
Yeah.
And I think 10 years later, I think it's further cemented.
Yeah.
The fact that our show is called Great Bad Movies, we're going to get a lot of hate online.
We've already gotten one person who, Greg, you were much kinder than I was in your thoughts. I was ready to end this person's living heir, even though they were very kind about their supposition that our show should not be called Great Bad Movies. And it's just, anyway, it's our podcast. So get your own podcast.
Yeah. And you know what? We should just say that this is a great movie podcast. This is not a bad movie podcast. There's been, a ton of bad movie podcasts. This is a great movie podcast. That being said,
sometimes greatness also has some badness.
The movies we tend to watch also have some asterisks, some things to talk about and joke about. But this is not one of those movies, really.
No, not really.
I mean, Tom Cruise is so good in this movie. Emily Blunt is so good in this movie. I forget that half of the frame in this movie, all the way through just about, is special effects. You forget.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's so otherworldly. It just does. I don't know how they did it. Honestly, I don't know how they did it. The action in it is potentially second to none. I mean, what movie would you put this on par with, action-wise?
I'd have to put it in the category of like alien action movies. And I feel like we'll do a podcast around the best action movies. It's up there. Although Mission Impossible 6 is still, I think, the best action movie I've ever seen.
Okay.
This is very close. It's interesting. Both Tom Cruise movies, that one relies almost no special effects. I mean, there's definitely special effects, but like not driving the action scenes. And this one has it. I think what it proves to me around special effect action scenes is if you have a good story and interesting characters in the middle of it with a good story, you can layer in the CGI well. And it didn't feel like too cartoony. I don't know how else to say it. There are
Yeah.
moments like they're on the sand and you can see the sand is moving
Right.
from the alien. They don't spend a lot of time when they're fighting the alien, so there's not a lot of like battle back and forth like a classic fight scene where they're hand-to-hand combat. The action scenes when they're fighting the aliens are pretty quick too,
Yeah.
which I think is a
Yep.
really smart decision of like they kill them quick or they're killed quick by the aliens. It's
Right.
not, one alien dragging out over and over again.
Right.
So I think that helps it. But, I'd love to know if you have any of the behind the scenes on how they made this or what they were trying to go for, because it feels different than a lot of these other ones. And there are other ones, but I feel like the Marvel movies sometimes lean way too heavily into the CGI. And then I get lost in that where it's just like, all right, it's a CGI battle and that's fine. But,
Yeah.
it's not interesting.
Well, there's a lot of different directions we could go. We should start with Doug Liman. He directed this movie, and he apparently is a notoriously horrible person to make a movie with.
Good director, terrible person.
Well, no, he's a great guy. He just changes his mind a lot. And so his movies tend to kind of take forever to make because he's constantly kind of like, I don't like that. Let's redo that. And so if you don't know who Doug Liman is, we first heard about him because he directed Swingers with Jon Favreau, Vince Vaughn. Then he made a movie called Go, which John August, who has a great podcast with Craig Mazin on script writing, it's called Script Notes. He wrote that. And then he made The Bourne Identity. And The Bourne Identity was like the worst production in history. It was going to be Matt Damon's third strike. It was going to be his third movie that was a failure, and he just assumed he wasn't going to really work again. But then The Bourne Identity kind of changed spy movies and action movies, changed James Bond's. They fired Pierce Brosnan after The Bourne Identity came out and rebooted that. And then he made Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad and Angelina, famously, which is a movie that we'll get to.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So he had made some pretty good action movies, but he had also made Jumper, that movie with Hayden Christensen before this. And all of these movies were just all over the place there during their production. So the secret to Edge of Tomorrow was he had the same stunt coordinator that he had had for a few of those movies, this guy named Simon Crane. And so he understood how Doug Liman worked, and he knew how to set things up for success so that they could kind of revisit shots, revisit scenes, revisit whatever they needed to, and they would kind of keep that stuff going. And so they were supposed to film that beach sequence, which was really kind of based on Normandy. And we haven't gotten into this on this podcast yet, but something I'm learning as we go in this podcast is I definitely enjoy directors of movies, but I'm starting to track with stunt coordinators. And they are a definite through line to movies that I love the most, where the energy is kinetic. So Simon Crane is the reason that the action in this movie is so good. And he's actually the one filming it. He's the one directing it. Doug Liman is just kind of hanging out and producing at that point. He's not actually directing those things. And so Simon Crane is the reason that those scenes are so good. And Simon Crane's history is incredible. So if we could just like take a quick left turn into Simon Crane's career. First of all, he did Rogue One. He also did Salt, which is a movie we will definitely be getting to. He has done a ton of James Bond movies throughout the years. He's also the guy who jumped from plane to plane and got $1 million for it in Cliffhanger.
Oh, I knew there was a reason he was on our show.
He is the stunt guy that did that for $1 million. So he is just all over the place. He's worked with like Fincher on Alien 3. He's worked with everybody. And in the special features for this movie, Edge of Tomorrow, he says Doug Liman is just about the most infuriating collaborator he's ever had in his career, because he's just constantly changing his mind. He said, but it always gets better. Every time we redo something, it's better. So you kind of can't fault it.
I feel like on a movie like this too, it almost works in its favor because it's about the same thing over and over again and revisiting and trying to do something, iterating on it. It's interesting. And, apologies to Mr. Crane for us, but that scene in Cliffhanger could have been a body double. I'm sorry, Mr. Crane, but I love that that's our through line on this show. So
Totally. I mean, we will get to this, but I mean, I have started to notice that favorite movies of mine have similar stunt coordinators. So I'll start bringing this up. Back to Edge of Tomorrow. The way that this movie was made was they didn't go to a beach to film. They built a beach on the back lot. And they were supposed to film the beach sequence for 2 weeks. They ended up doing it for 3 months because it was just right there. They could go back. If they didn't like a shot, from yesterday, they would say, okay, for an hour today, we're going to take a break from whatever scene we're working on. And we're going to go back to yesterday's spot and just redo this one moment so that scene is better. And so they just kind of kept doing that, where they would go back and capture a better version of a moment. They were also kind of writing it as they went, which is where Christopher McQuarrie comes in, the guy behind the modern Mission Impossible movies. He had become Tom Cruise's guy. When we were covering Mission Impossible 2, Robert Towne would follow Tom Cruise from movie to movie and kind of work on the script. He was a script doctor, just kind of his guy. And at this point, this is the 5th movie that Tom Cruise had worked on where Christopher McQuarrie was his guy. It starts with Valkyrie, a movie that he wrote. So Christopher McQuarrie is there just putting out pages every day. He's the one who fixed Mission Impossible 4 a couple years before this. And so there's just this crew, and they're just kind of like making it up as they go. And there isn't really a script. And so the reason Emily Blunt's character is so great is because Emily Blunt fought for that to be her character and was in every meeting to create that character. Same thing with Tom Cruise, obviously, Bill Paxton. So that's why it was great. Doug Liman is an indecisive director. He doesn't just go with something like, we'll just cut that moment out or whatever. We'll just live with how that thing from yesterday wasn't good enough. No, they went back and redid it. And Tom Cruise said, if you want me to, I'll work 7 days a week on this movie. And so Doug Liman said, okay, let's work 7 days a week on this movie. And that's what they did for months and months and months. So that's my hopefully truncated behind the scenes rant on this movie. The creative process on this one is really quite incredible. And unfortunately, it just shows that, if you really care about it and you're willing to redo things and have the hard conversations, you can make a great movie like this.
On the go, on the fly, really, because
absolutely,
it doesn't feel like it was kind of written as they go. There are some movies, even like, while I think Mission Impossible 6 is the best action movie from the action standpoint, I know they were kind of writing that as we go. The plot definitely feels kind of like stapled on and in between the scenes, where this one feels different, where it feels much more integrated to me into the story and the arc of it and where they're going. And so it's pretty remarkable that they were able to do this and pull it all together in a movie that you end up, as you said, 28 times. We kind of relive the same day with Tom Cruise. It doesn't feel repetitive. There are moments, but then they bring in the humor on it. There's some great moments. I think one of my favorite moments is it's like the 3rd or 4th time he's like realizing how he can escape and he gets run over by a truck. It's just like cut to the next day. And it brings it like, oh yeah, you would have to there's a lot of learning that you'd have to go through to do all of this.
The way Tom Cruise put that to everybody involved was, I think this guy should be like Wile E. Coyote, where whenever something horrible happens to him, it can be funny.
Right.
And so that was his input. Let's do that. And it's super fun.
Yeah.
There's also moments where when the day resets, I personally felt impatient, like, oh, not again. And then they show Tom Cruise doing something where he is super impatient that he has to live the day again. And it's almost like they were anticipating how the audience would feel about this and meeting that feeling with, we got you. We understand what you're going through because we're going through it too. It's just incredible. So let's talk about this for a second. Where do you stand on the movie Groundhog's Day?
I'm a big fan of Groundhog's Day. I love
you are,
that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of those, I remember the first time I saw it, to me, it was a bigger movie. A lot of expectations, and I wasn't ready for the amount of times he relives the day. I think in my head, you're thinking like 3 or 4 times, and then we get through the movie.
Yeah.
And they really leaned into how many times he does it. And it's awesome. I love that, a big Bill Murray fan. It's a funny movie. It's great. So, I'm a big Groundhog Day fan. So I like these kind of movies. I don't mind. I know that some people don't always love the time loops. And I struggle sometimes with time travel in movies, just because sometimes they get a little too explainy about it. And sometimes it's like, you just need to not go into the science of this. And you've got to be, like there's some movies where they just lean too hard into it. And you're like, this isn't real. Okay, time travel exists. We'll make the big leap. Stop explaining all of it, And then, you get into like you made a change and something bad happens. I think The Simpsons did a really amazing episode.
Oh, I need to watch that.
I think it was a Treehouse of Horror, where Homer goes back in time and tries not to hurt anything. And like, it's hilarious. but it kind of uses all the tropes that you see in time travel movies. So I struggle with time travel movies, but the time loop movies I think are more interesting because they're trying to solve a problem.
Have you seen Palm Springs?
Essentially. I haven't. I've almost watched it a few times.
You should watch that.
Okay.
Yeah, the Groundhog's Day movie is a divisive one. And so I'm married to somebody who hates Groundhog Day.
Okay.
And so at dinner I said, hey, do you have any input for like stuff I should say in the podcast tonight? We're recording this in the evening. And she said, I don't know, what's the movie? And I said, Edge of Tomorrow. And she said, have I seen Edge of Tomorrow? I said, no, I don't think you have because it's a Groundhog Day movie. She said, oh, okay, well then my notes are 2 thumbs down.
That's rude. That's rude, Nicole.
Yeah.
You haven't even seen it.
Give it a chance.
You don't know.
So you're talking about explaining this, and there's actually a really funny tweet by Christopher McQuarrie that he tweeted 5 years after this came out. And the tweet was, the worst scene in Edge of Tomorrow is an attempt to understand the aliens' intention. Compliments of the studio. They are invaders. They invade. As humans, we should not have to have this explained.
Yeah.
And I can't think of exactly the scene that he's talking about, unless it's that one scene when they're kind of standing around at the table and kind of explaining the rules of the movie, where it's Emily Blunt and is it a British guy? Who's the doctor guy?
Yeah, the doctor guy who they didn't believe that the day was resetting and all of that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the scene. Or it could be when Tom Cruise is able to see where the Omega is, the alien creature that is able to reset time. Yeah. And so there is a little bit of, explaining this of how it works and the rules. And she basically didn't die and then got a blood transfusion.
Right.
And then lost the ability to reset the day.
There's also a funny anecdote from that scene where Emily Blunt and Doug Liman are just really complaining while they're filming that scene that it just has too much exposition, too much explanation. And Doug Liman turns to Christopher McQuarrie and says, we never had this kind of problem with the Bourne Identity. And Christopher McQuarrie said, how many time-traveling aliens were in that movie? This is kind of a different thing.
Yeah. I remember that scene. It is a little explaining, but it didn't bother me. I didn't have a reaction to it at all. I'm like, oh, we're out of the plot. It fit right into me. So while it may have bothered them and I get the critique of it in the movie, you kind of need a breath.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments where a lot of action, a lot of tense. So those are the moments where you kind of are able to catch your breath a little bit.
When Christopher McQuarrie is making Mission Impossible movies, they have scenes exactly like that. And what they do is they create a little set that they never tear down so they can go back and redo that scene over and over again as the plot is shifting while they film. So I wonder if they did that in this movie as well, where they just had that one room with the magic computer table and they just went back and refilmed it until it was the perfect exposition scene. But I rewatched it today and it was fine. I don't know that they actually explained the intentions of the alien in that scene. So I feel like they had to do what they did there. And it's in all of Christopher McQuarrie's movies since then. So,
right.
So I feel like we just need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is episode 9 of Great Bad Movies that we're releasing. We've already done Mission Impossible 2. How would you compare Tom Cruise in this movie, which is 14 years after Mission Impossible 2? How would you compare these two movies in performances of Tom Cruise?
I think he's maybe a better action actor in this movie. Obviously, in Mission Impossible 2, he's Ethan Hunt, super spy, John Woo-ified, wind blowing where there's no wind, and pretty cocky as a character. And I feel like this, especially the first half of this movie, he's pretty bumbling. I think that Wile E. Coyote is an apt description.
Right.
He just doesn't quite get it. He's not a good soldier. He isn't a soldier to begin with. And he's trying really hard, but he's just not good enough yet. And so I really think that this is, a great performance by him. How would you answer that question as you think about it?
I think there's so much more depth to this performance. Who he fights for Ethan Hunt to be in Mission Impossible 2 is pretty great for that series because he's kind of a blank canvas, although I think they're very intentional about who Ethan Hunt is movie to movie. And like we said in that episode, I think Mission Impossible 2 is kind of amazing because they really did kind of set it up like, we can keep making these. Like, we're good to go. We figured out how to make another one. We're going to keep making these. and they don't really perfect it until like the third one. But in this movie, he's so smarmy in that first scene. I swear they digitally make his teeth whiter to make me dislike him more, which is just an incredible move on the part of a special effects team. Like, we're going to accentuate his teeth to make me dislike him as a character. I think that opening scene when he's talking to Brendan Gleeson.
So there are lots of those where they have the choice to play it kind of different. And he's just the classic hero. He's pretty is one note in that. He's great. And the action sequences, I think, are second to none. As I said, Mission Impossible 6 is the best action movie I've ever seen.
Mission Impossible 5 was the year after this,
which is also great. So it's hard to separate. Those are kind of how I think of Fast 4 and Fast 5. You know, Mission Impossible 5 and 6 are really one movie in a sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'm in the tank for that. And I'm probably a little bit later to the Mission Impossible world than you are. You are, I think, probably I would call you a super fan of the Mission Impossible averse.
You know what I was thinking the other day? I mean, here it is, July 2024, and a lot of things are happening in the world. And I really just think of July 2024 as 10 months before Mission Impossible 8 comes out. That's how I would mark this moment in my life.
Yeah. So I would say this is one of Tom Cruise's best performances, maybe ever.
I mean, Born on the 4th of July, Magnolia,
Tropic Thunder, I think
Thunder, obviously
steals every scene he's in.
Collateral. I mean, he did those 2 Steven Spielberg movies kind of back to back, Minority Report. And then pretty quickly after that, like a couple years later, he did War of the Worlds. Well, he had done Jack Reacher 2 years before this. Where do you stand on Jack Reacher?
First one is spectacular.
Yeah. Great movie.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Second one, great, awful movie, maybe.
Not even great. It's low on our scale.
Yeah. It's an awful bad movie. I don't know. It's not good. So
it's like they decided to make a Jack Reacher TV show on network television, not the one that's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise was starring. And they got the director of 30-something, Ed Zwick. Also the director of Glory. I love some of his work. But yeah, the chasm of Jack Reacher 1 to Jack Reacher 2 is akin to Speed 1 to Speed 2, maybe. Not quite as bad.
Yeah.
But pretty rough. So Jack Reacher 1's great. Oblivion, Then this movie comes out. Then Mission Impossible 5, Jack Reacher 2 and The Mummy, both kind of struggling movies. But then American Made, which is a pretty good movie directed by Doug Liman. And then Mission Impossible 6. And then we got Top Gun Maverick. I mean, he's just on a tear.
He's on a roll right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's hard to fault any of his choices. And he tends, as you would expect, to someone. I mean, he is a classic movie star.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest movie stars in the world. He surrounds himself with good people that know how to make good movies, and so that makes a difference. You know, you find what Christopher McQuarrie is a really talented writer, good director.
Yep.
That's what you need, and he's got his own production company, so he's got a lot of control, creative control over what he wants the finished product to be.
Sure,
makes sense.
Yep.
I hear there's a Maverick 3 coming out, so.
That's what I heard. A little hesitant about that one.
I need to see it. I have not seen Top Gun 2 yet. So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. We should get to Top Gun 2 at the risk of it angering people.
Okay. Perfect.
Let's get to Emily Blunt then. It's time for us to have the conversation that needed to be had.
Yeah.
About Emily Blunt. Where do you stand on Emily Blunt's career?
I'm a big fan of Emily Blunt. I think she's great. I think she's amazing in this. I think she's amazing in Sicario. I'm trying to think of what else I've seen her in. I know that I've seen her in some other things, but those are the 2 movies that jump to mind for me of her holding her own in a very action testosterone fest movie, especially Sicario, which is kind of the point of that movie and her character. And I know that it's also a story, as you've mentioned, a story told through the eyes of, you know, the white protagonist to tell us a story about Mexico and the drug wars. And I think that's an interesting take on it. But she's spectacular. I think she's an amazing actress in this and everything I've seen her in. What's your take on Emily Blunt?
I mean, I'm her biggest fan. I'm a huge fan of The Devil Wears Prada. It's also an interesting week for us in America, or on planet Earth, I guess, because there's talk of Devil Wears Prada 2, which I'm very excited about. I'm much more in like the rom-com-y Anne Hathaway movie, I think, then I'm much more into those than you are.
Yeah, I think
Those,
that's fair.
It's a separate lane of great bad movies that I like more than you. But that was the first time I had ever seen her. She had like a little part in Charlie Wilson's War, which is a movie that I like a lot. And then, man, I might not have really tracked with her again until The Adjustment Bureau in 2011, which is kind of like, what if the cast of Mad Men worked for some, I think they just call the person, it's like they're angels and they're like trying to navigate the fabric of the world and make sure that everything happens when it's supposed to. And it's not like a super successful movie, but it's a sweet movie with Matt Damon that I've rewatched it a few times because it's like just a nice cup of warm milk. Like, oh, this feels good. She was, of course, in The Muppets for a second, which I'm a big Muppets fan. And then she was in The 5-Year Engagement with Jason Segel. She was in Looper, which is a movie I adore. And then she was on quite a run. And then she was in Into the Woods and Sicario after this. So she kind of has solidified herself as one of the best amongst us. So, I mean, I support her being Mary Poppins. If you're wondering who enjoyed Jungle Cruise with Emily Blunt and The Rock, I'm the one who liked Jungle Cruise with.
You're the reason we have the Rotten Tomato score that we do on the audience on that.
Yes. I mean, was she Oscar nominated in Oppenheimer?
I think so.
Yeah. And then she was in The Fall Guy, and we will be getting to The Fall Guy, obviously.
Obviously, yes.
I feel like we are 15% into Emily Blunt's long, illustrious career. I think she could work as long as she wants, and we are all better for it.
Agreed.
Can we talk about Bill Paxton for a second? Because Twisters came out this month, and there's a bit of a recognition of Bill Paxton happening out there, which is nice to see.
Yeah. Finally, unfortunately, post-mortem for him. I'm a big Bill Paxton fan.
Yeah.
He's one of those character actors that, I feel like Twister was one of the only ones I can think of where he was like a starring role, but he's like the sidekick, the comic relief, that guy in a lot of movies, from Aliens to, even this movie. It's like you've seen him in everything, to True Lies. I mean, he's just got such memorable characters, and he's one of those actors also that steals every scene he's in.
100%.
You're just like, oh, thank you, Bill, for coming through on this movie.
Totally. I remember him kind of becoming a thing after Aliens, where people owned it at their house or whatever. Everybody was quoting Bill Paxton. But I'm just looking at his IMDb page. He was in Stripes. He was in The Terminator. He was in Commando. He was in Weird Science. He was in Next of Kin.
That's a movie we'll for sure be getting to.
Totally, with Swayze. He was in Navy SEALs. Oh my gosh. Predator 2. This is incredible. So I heard a great story on Rob Lowe's podcast. He was good friends with Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton was up for an Emmy against the guy who played Dexter, Michael C. Hall. And Michael C. Hall had been nominated for that last season of Dexter he did after he had beaten cancer. He was in remission. And so he wins the Emmy. You know how on like the Emmy broadcast, they will show all the nominees so that they can show all of them as they're reading the winner.
Mm-hmm.
As they read the winner, Bill Paxton looks to the person next to him. Maybe it's his wife. And you can clearly see him say, "Cancer card." Which is just the greatest. And I'm sure he would have said that to Michael C. Hall. Everyone loves Bill Paxton, and he just says it like it is. Anyways, Bill Paxton, incredible in this movie. And I feel like his speech that he redoes over and over again is just unbelievable.
Good news is there's hope for you, Private. Hope in the form of glorious combat. Battle is the great redeemer, the fiery crucible in which the only true heroes are forged. The one place where all men truly share the same rank, regardless of what kind of parasitic scum they were going in.
Unbelievable. What are some other moments in the movie that you loved?
I really loved the scene right before they get in the helicopter. They've kind of made it through the battle, and they have this moment where they kind of get to this like abandoned town.
Yeah.
And they have a couple scenes there, like a couple go rounds of it. And there's like a really tender moment between the two of them where basically she realizes that they've done this many times.
Yeah, with the coffee.
And I thought that scene was so good because one, you kind of know where you are in the movie.
Yep.
So you know something's coming.
Yep.
So there's this tension of, something bad's going to happen, but you
Yep.
also have this moment where you want that moment to just kind of freeze for a while and just stay there,
Yeah. And that's what his character is doing in that scene. He's saying, why do we
Yeah.
need to get to the helicopter? Let's hang out here for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciated that scene. I think from there, there's a change in I think that's where also like he gets more frustrated and when he dies and he's trying different things. And up until that point, he's been trying to like map out every single step that they take to, get 1 inch further. And I think at that point, he kind of stops. I think that's also a turning point, probably intentional, but in an intentional turning point in the direction of the movie where they are trying something different. And that's my biggest qualm with the movie is they basically, however many times they die on the beach.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of going with everyone on the beach, you go earlier. You try something different, That's the only thing of like, if I were living through this, I would be trying a million different variations to try something different that might change it. And that's what happened at the end when they defeat the aliens is they don't attack on the beach. They attack earlier with the crew getting together and kind of coming together.
Yeah.
But I guess they're setting up that as the finale there. But
that's a really good spot right there where it kind of starts to get a little bit dramatic. We should say this was based on a graphic novel called All You Need Is Kill. And her character in that book is a big coffee person. So that was kind of an homage to that. I think coffee doesn't exist anymore, but she has a stash and is really into it. And so they were kind of alluding to that in that scene in the movie. But yeah, when the day restarts and they say there's something wrong with your suit and he says there's a dead guy in it, that's his emotional state in that moment too. It's just really well written. And the emotional stakes there are incredible. I'm so surprised to hear you say that you liked their relationship in the movie because it could be seen as romance.
It's on the edge.
But it's more than that. Something they fought through a lot while they were making it because they really didn't want it to be anything other than these two people are growing close. In fact, Tom Cruise says, I wish I didn't know you because it hurts too bad. What a great line that was.
I feel like there's just enough. There's a hint. There's no like romance in the way that we're used to seeing in action movies or in movies.
Yeah. There is a kiss at the end.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, not scripted, not planned. Emily Blunt did it. She's like, I don't know. I just felt it. So I did it. And apparently Tom Cruise is like, what are you doing? And then he kisses her back. There's like a moment where he's like, what are you doing? And that was the only time it happened. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think the timing of that is like she's distracting the aliens that are coming.
Right.
They both know they're going to die and they both talk about it, you know, in that moment.
Yeah.
And they're not coming back from it. It's beautiful. I think they do a really good job of them getting close throughout the movie without crossing a line that feels wrong. I think, if they had added in a love story between them, it would have felt false. Like
totally.
And this is my whole thing with movies like this. And we suspend disbelief over the big things really easily. So you go, oh, there are aliens and there's a time loop. We go, okay, I'm in. But if they stitch together a love story that doesn't feel true to the characters, that's what people remember. And so it's the big leaps are easier to make than the little ones in that suspension of disbelief. And I think they do a really good job of not going to places that are cliche, or I could totally see a really dumb love story in the hands of less capable writers, directors, actors.
Yeah.
That would have been what you would expected. And it would have been a great bad movie. And we would have been talking about how terrible the chemistry was between the leads and why are they having this moment in the middle, those sorts of things, which they don't get into in this. So
I mean, you're saying that about a love story. I think the exact same thing could be said about an alien movie. Like, I am not in on an alien movie. I don't really like science fiction at all because I feel like it's just, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if these facts were happening, and I don't feel connected to the people in them very much at all. But there are a lot of movies where I do feel connected to the people. Like Gattaca, for instance, was a great science fiction movie. There are movies where just because it's taking place in the future doesn't mean it's not a story I can relate to. And Doug Liman said he's not interested in making an alien movie. he was interested in making a war movie. And so I think he described it as, I'm making a war movie that has aliens in it. But I don't know, I never really felt like I was watching I guess I did feel like I was watching an alien movie, but it really doesn't give you a second to breathe,
Yeah.
Even when it slows down, it's emotionally dense.
Yeah. I liken it to, there's that analogy of like, and it's a gross analogy, but like, the frog being cooked in the, the pot where they're turning up
Mhm.
I feel like they do a really great job of, there's always tension in the movie. It doesn't feel relaxing. It's not like a relaxing watch of a movie where it's like, even Speed, I love that movie dearly. Think it's great. But,
Mhm.
the tension in it is not the same. It doesn't feel, the stakes aren't as high, but this feels like they're turning up the temperature slowly throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
get to the end. I remember the first time I watched it when Tom Cruise, his character, loses the ability to reset the day. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the beginning of the third act, really.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember going, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, totally.
Like, uh-oh.
Right. The fun
What's
of like a stakeless existence
Mhm.
is out the window.
Yeah. And then from there, like it even like ratcheted it up even more.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate all of those little touches that they do in this movie. So yeah.
There is only one moment in this movie where I'm like, come on. And it is when he says, I feel it. I can't reset the day anymore, after they do like the blood transfusion for him.
Mhm.
There's no way he felt that. But we did need to know that.
Mhm.
And I promise you, I didn't really understand what was happening the first time I saw this movie. So I did need him to tell me that.
Yeah.
That's the only moment where I'm like, oh, look, there's a screenwriter close by telling us what's going on,
Yeah. To me, there's a pretty fun running joke throughout the movie of her shooting him or
Yeah.
killing him,
Right. Right.
which in this movie, it is kind of funny because there are some funny moments. But that was, they had to like, oh no, you can't kill him right now to reset the day. He can't do it. So
Totally.
I get it.
I loved Bill Paxton when Tom Cruise meets him and he says, you're an American. He goes, no, I'm from Kentucky.
That seems fair.
That was amazing. There's too many funny moments to list, but when Tom Cruise is basically like they're explaining the universe to him and he's like clearly out, he goes, first of all, this is a terrific presentation. Terrific.
Yeah.
When he says that, I laughed really hard and watched it twice. And there are other moments where it's like, it feels like the movie might start to slow down and he's just like, pretty much game over tomorrow. So can we move this along? Like, let's keep this moving along here.
Yeah.
This movie feels like it's 3 hours long because of the resetting, but it's like a brisk, what is it, like an hour 50, hour 40?
Something like that. Yeah. It doesn't feel long. Usually I'm the one that's like, well, you could probably trim 20 minutes off of this.
Yeah.
This is one of the rare occasions where I could have probably had a little bit more. That's why I talk about the exposition at the beginning, maybe a little bit more of Tom Cruise's character
Yeah.
just to get to know him. But
Yep.
also the way they kind of bookend it works. I think the only leap of faith that I have is him getting conscripted into the army feels a little writery to me.
Sure.
But I 100% forgive it because everything else is spot on for it.
Hey, I wanted to say one thing where I said that we reset 8 minutes in to the movie. That's not right. 8 minutes in is when we start the day of him waking up on the luggage that we then go back to over and over again. So there's really just 8 minutes before we start the loop.
Interesting. Yeah, that's awesome.
10-year anniversary.
Yeah, that's wild. It feels like it could have come out last year, or it feels very timeless in a lot of ways.
It also feels like this is one of those like generational movies. I didn't hesitate to buy this to watch it last night.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I'm gonna want this one.
Yeah.
So this is, we talk about like great albums through the years that just kind of hit reset, either by the Beatles or by Radiohead or whatever. This is one of those movies in the mid-teens, that I feel like goes down as one of the greats.
I agree. I'm trying to think if we take from like 2010 to 2019,
Yeah.
great movies. I'm trying to remember when did Fast Five come out?
I think it was 2011.
Yeah. So you have like Fast Five, John Wick, you have this,
Uh-huh.
Mission Impossible 6
And 5.
and 5. David Leitch is doing some cool stuff at this time as well. I'm trying to remember if Atomic Blonde is in this time. I think it is.
2017.
Yeah. So we're in this, Doug Liman with The Bourne Identity really changed a lot in action movies.
Yeah.
With that movie, with how they were shot and leaning into it's almost like a thinking man's action movie. It's interesting. There's good characters.
Yep.
The way the action is shot is different. Then we have John Wick, which is borrowing from The Raid and The Raid 2.
Yep.
And their action scenes, but kind of this change. And you have these stunt coordinator directors and these stunt coordinators really coming front and center. So I feel like we're in this new age of action movie, really. And some people are doing it spectacular, and some people are obviously doing it just kind of, if you watched Fast X, which I loved, it's not in the same, that's CGI done poorly is basically what that is.
No one was a bigger fan of the Fast and Furious franchise than me. And I am not looking forward to 11.
I know. Fast 6 is their last great one. 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
I will go to the mat with anyone about how great those are.
Yep.
7, I will throw in there for Paul Walker fans. And after that, it's not just jumping a shark. It's like a shark that is jumping another shark that's jumping another shark through.
Inside a submarine.
Yes, exactly.
In Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I was disappointed by 7 and 8 in the theater and 9 as well, and then kind of really enjoyed them on the rewatch. So we will be getting to those movies eventually. Doug Liman, though, I think he's secretly making a movie with Tom Cruise right now, actually in outer space. Did you know that? Tom Cruise is filming a film in outer space kind of secretly right now with the help of NASA?
No, I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course he is. He's like, he literally is Ethan Hunt. And,
Totally.
you know.
So that is Doug Liman's follow-up to the remake of Roadhouse, which is a movie we'll definitely get to.
Okay. I love that he did Roadhouse.
Yeah. Have you watched that?
No, not yet.
Oh my gosh. We will be getting to the remake of Roadhouse and the original.
Yeah.
I will just say that I am surprised that Jim Cameron didn't make this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of moments in this movie where it seems like this probably crossed James Cameron's desk at some point. And I'm glad he didn't make it because I feel like Doug Liman did a better job.
I feel like as great a director as James Cameron is, he is equally bad a writer in terms of the tropiness of his characters and the motivations.
Yeah.
So that's always been a struggle with me with his movies, where great action director needs Christopher McQuarrie to come in and write his stuff for him, basically.
There are some exceptions, maybe. I mean, he rewrote Point Break with Catherine Bigelow, and we'll get to Point Break.
Mm-hmm.
They rewrote that movie like very quickly. And there are other times in that time period, like early 90s, where he would just like take 3 weeks and write a movie that then became a massive hit.
He knows what people want.
Yeah.
He is a hit maker in that sense. But even Point Break, the writing in Point Break.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, James Cameron. You will have Ron Howard fans coming after you, and I'll have James Cameron fans coming after me.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to rewatch Point Break. It's going to be incredible. Let me just read you a quote from Christopher McQuarrie about this movie. It was a constant struggle to reconcile the size of the movie with the complexity of the movie, with the emotional demands of the movie. I think in a lot of ways we were successful. I think in other ways we paid the price. Only time will tell what people really think of it. That's a quote he gave 3 weeks after this came out.
Huh.
And this movie was not well received, kind of bombed at the box office. It made like $20 million its first weekend. And it cost $175 million to make. No, $178 million. It seems like a recipe for failure. But I feel like they spent that money pretty well, and we think made a generational movie. It eventually made $370 million worldwide. You know, and you kind of have to like assume that a movie has to make double its budget to break even. They also spent like $100 million marketing this. So this movie, you know, beloved, kind of broke even, made like 28 million in DVD and Blu-ray sales. So before we get to drinking games, Joe, can we talk for a second about how the critics thought of this movie?
Sure. We also should do Back of the Box at some point.
Oh my. Joe, in case somebody has never seen this movie, and yet this is the second episode in a row we've done this, and yet they've gone through the last hour of us talking about it. Let's pretend somebody's walking through Blockbuster Video, trying to figure out what movie to rent. And they're picking up all the boxes and reading the back to get the synopsis to see if it's what they should watch or not. It's time for you to read us the back of the box. It's the back of the box.
All right, so here's the back of the box. As you pick it up, you look at it and go, is this movie for me? When Cage, Tom Cruise, is caught in a time loop, he must learn to fight and make allies where he can as an alien invasion is inching ever closer to exterminating the human race. Will his partnership with super soldier Rita Verataski hold up? Can he figure out the right way to go? Or will he just be born again only to die a short time later? The fate of the world hangs in the balance. The Edge of Tomorrow will have you on the edge of your seat right up until the final credits roll. That's the back of the box.
I think I rent it.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I might be lukewarm. That sounds like it could. A little science fiction-y to me.
We need to get you over your science fiction phobia here. Because science fiction has been used forever to also paint social issues in a way that people can see them and all of that. So I'm more a fan of sci-fi and even fantasy than you are. So
yeah. Okay, so that's the back of the box. What is Joe Sky Tucker's real back of the box?
All right. The real back of the box is, what if you could live the same day over again? What would you change? Now, what if the fate of the world were on your shoulders to make the needed changes so that the human race is not helplessly slaughtered by an alien invasion? That is the ridiculous plot of this movie. Or it's Groundhog Day, but on the battlefield. That ridiculous premise is executed perfectly with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt fighting their way to the big bad alien that controls time. I know, I hear myself too, but this movie is amazing, proving once again that within the right hands, the craziest of ideas can be perfect.
It's a great, great movie.
Yeah, it's a great, great movie.
Well, we think it's a great, great movie. I think people have continued to loop back on this one quite a bit in the last 10 years. Critics also really like this movie. What do you think the tomato rating is on this?
70%. That's got to be where it is.
It feels like a 70. I think you're right.
Like a 70.
You know what? Critics went with 91.
Oh, 91. Okay. Audience score has got to be 70, though.
You'd think it would be about a 70, sometimes a little bit higher than 70.
71 and a half.
Yeah. It's a 90.
Oh,
so yeah, this is a 70 for sure.
For sure.
When we decided to watch this movie, I was a little bit nervous. Like, is that a great bad movie? I feel like the last couple times I've seen that, I've really enjoyed it and not in an ironic way. So I went to read some of the comments of the critics, and this one made me realize I can't wait to watch this movie, and it's perfect for our show. It's Tiber writing for the Boston Globe, and he says, the fact is that this is a pretty good summer-kablooie movie.
Yeah.
And Cruise is better than pretty good in it. And I think that is the perfect description of this. In fact, pretty good summer-kablooie movies could be the title of this podcast.
Absolutely. It won't be, but the alternate, be in parentheses.
Yeah, it is the alt title of our podcast. And so let me read just a couple more because these are really good. David Sims, who's the co-host of the Blank Check podcast, which is amazing for The Atlantic, he says, Edge of Tomorrow is the perfect mix of blustering action and sci-fi thinky nonsense that is best enjoyed without picking at it too much. That also was my first experience with this movie when I saw it. I was like, I don't entirely understand what happened, but I really enjoyed it.
Yep.
I did understand it this time, probably the most, but I think it was because I knew I had to talk about it.
Yeah. I feel like they thread the needle really well on that thinkiness and then but not over explaining this, as we've talked about. That's a tough thing to do in a movie that has time travel in it.
Right.
And these kind of the rules of the universe that they've created. And so I think they do a really good job. This is a less is more. I always feel like that with time travel. Okay, there's time travel. There's a machine that does it. And we don't need to get into quantum blah, 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 blah.
Christopher Nolan-verse.
Yes.
Although this movie would have benefited from Michael Caine explaining the movie the way he does in every single Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more reviews that I want to read to you. Richard Brody in The New Yorker. The metaphorical overlay of fantasy and history is the best thing Edge of Tomorrow has to offer. And for much of its running time, that overlay is enough to lend the movie a shiver of curious power.
I agree with that.
Curious power is a great wording there for this movie. And the last one from Slate. This is a movie about Tom Cruise working very, very hard to please the world.
All right. Yeah, I can see that.
Checks out.
Yeah. I feel like that's every Tom Cruise movie, but all right.
Especially, kind of starting around this time, just basically yelling, "Are you not entertained?"
Yeah.
By the way, he did 100% of the stunts in this movie.
That's, again, the least surprising thing you could say.
All right, Joe, should we get to drinking games?
Yeah, we've got to get to drinking games and some of our tropes, which, spoiler alert, there are only 2 tropes.
Yeah.
And I had to really stretch them to get there. But let's start with drinking games. So we have our stock drinking games. You don't have to drink alcohol. You can drink coffee. You can drink water if you need to get some hydration.
Sure.
Soda, whatever it is. So, we're not advocating for alcoholism in any way. Get some help if you need help. That's all I'll say. So, silent helicopter? No, there are a lot of helicopters in this.
Yep.
None of them silent.
Very noisy. Oh, can I pause right there for a second?
Yes.
I am watching movies in Dolby Atmos now, which has the above you channel. And what I've learned so far in Dolby Atmos is anytime there's a helicopter in a movie, the Dolby Atmos people are having a party. There's a party at Dolby Atmos headquarters because anytime there's a helicopter, they're like, "I got you." And so it was amazing in that way. Okay, keep going.
All right. So push in and enhance. I gave this one to you because they're some of the sequences where he has the visions of where the alien is. And then they kind of overlay that with the projector in the room with the 3 of them. And they're trying to find where the bad alien is. So you can drink with that one.
Yep.
When 2 people share a slow motion look in the middle of chaos. Oh, this movie has about 3 or 4 of those.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I was so happy about that. There's also explosions with silent suffering and ringing in the ears that happen a couple different times. I was also very happy about those. We don't get those often in our stock drinking games.
That's true.
Does the opening credit scene lock into place with a sound? So I'm giving this one to you, but there is no credit. There's no title of this movie.
So how are you giving it to them?
I think because it's we've never seen that before. So there's no credit at all. So you gotta lean into it. So
you drink?
Yeah, you drink. That's right. We're drinking.
I love it. Okay.
Flashback to dialogue. There's a lot of flashbacks in this and resetting. So you can drink on that or not. That one's that one's iffy for me.
Sure.
I did not have us with the crazy CGI and bad there are no bad effects. The special effects team on this is spectacular.
Incredible. Incredible.
I didn't really even have great bad shots because there really isn't a lot of shooting at the bad guys, or the bad guys shooting at them because the bad guys are aliens and they don't have guns. So
I'm going to say that there are a lot of times in this movie where they're great bad avoiding the aliens when they're right there.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, so the aliens in this movie have these tentacle things, and it just seems like if they even got close to you, you would get hurt. And yet they're running right up to these things and punching them and somehow not getting scraped. And so there's great bad not getting hurt by aliens when they totally should have lost an arm or something.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. So
okay.
It's a dealer's choice on whether you drink on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Are the streets inextricably wet? No, but I'm giving this one because the streets are inextricably underwater at the end of the movie.
The lube is inextricably wet.
Yeah, yes. And the fact that they have to fly a plane through the water, there's no reason that they need to have a foot of water at that point. So that is a total drink at that point. We don't have a give us the room, and there are obviously no Interpol references. So those are our stock drinking games. So a fair amount of them actually in this.
Not bad.
Surprising. Yeah. All right, Greg Swinehart, what is one of your drinking games that you have for this?
Like we said, the day resets 28 times. So this movie could be potentially very dangerous for drinking games. So I'm just going to say anytime the day resets with him waking up on the pile of bags, that's not something we see every time.
Okay, I like that. That's awesome.
Yep.
My first one is every time there's a World War II reference.
Oh, that's good. How about every time Bill Paxton gives the Great Redeemer speech?
Oh, that's awesome.
And if Tom Cruise gives it for him, that's 2 drinks.
Oh, nice. That's, or finish your drink, whatever you got there.
Yeah.
I have every time there is a funny, in air quotes, death that Tom Cruise has.
Okay, I have anytime Emily Blunt shoots Tom Cruise.
All right, that was my next one. So.
Okay.
Which sometimes are funny and sometimes aren't. Mostly they're funny, though.
Mostly they're funny, yeah.
Yeah. The first one, that was such a beautiful shock.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, something's broken. What is it? Oh, it's my back. And then she just shoots him in the head.
I can only feel my lips. Is that what he
Yeah.
says? And he's like
Some-
poking his lips out.
And then there's another one where he's like, I think I'm okay. And then he's like,
Yeah.
no, just,
What a weird thing to laugh at, but I laughed every time.
yeah.
Every time he tells somebody what's going to happen next in the scene.
Oh, okay. I have something very similar. I have every time they reference a conversation they had in the future. So there's a couple times where like, we've had this conversation before, or we're about,
Yeah. We will get to a movie called Next with Nicolas Cage, which has a bunch of those moments where it's like, it was amazing. It just hasn't happened yet. There's a couple moments like that in this too.
Yeah.
Which is just perfect for us.
And I have another one, I'll piggyback on that one, which is every time they mention how many times they've had this conversation before.
Oh, that's a good one. Anytime somebody says there's a dead guy in it.
Okay, that's a good one. I have every time there's a laugh that releases the tension, take a drink.
Wow. Okay.
And then I have every time you hear the alpha scream.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which is that's a pretty scary alien. So they're
Yeah.
like the soldiers, and they're the alphas, which are pretty scary, and then the omega,
Right.
which is the one that controls time. But the alphas are pretty scary. So
100%. And that's how he resets. He kills an alpha and the blood gets on.
yeah, the blood
Tom
apparently the
Cruise.
alpha. Yeah,
And now Tom Cruise is controlling the resetting of the day. It was a terrific presentation.
Mhm.
Terrific.
Yep. Yeah, nailed it. I have two tropes that we have, and I had to search hard for this, but we have a reluctant hero, especially at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a conversation in the middle of a car chase. So they're like, there's a couple times where they're driving away from the battlefield and they're having so that one's a little iffy, but there's no other real tropes that we have here.
And this is the section you're calling you might be watching a great bad movie if,
Yeah.
or signs you're watching a great bad movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a great bad movie, so it kind of doesn't, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, should we get to some important questions?
Let's do it.
Did this movie hold up then?
Yeah, I think it did.
Does it hold up now?
I think it's even better now.
That's exactly what I have as well. It's even better now.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know what we had.
Yeah, we have gold is what we have.
I mean, a great bad movie is a movie you think is going to be great, and then it's a little bit bad. Or you go in with low expectations and you say, you know what, that movie actually wasn't that bad. And that's what happened with this movie.
Yeah.
How hard do they sell the good guy?
They don't really. It's a sign of a really good movie. They sell Emily Blunt's character a little bit,
Well, that's true.
but then you kind of realize why. And she is an amazing soldier, but she also had this power before, which is why she's a great soldier.
The Angel of Verdun.
Yep.
How hard do they sell the bad guy?
Again, not very much. You kind of see how bad the bad guy is or how bad the aliens are, but they don't. There's some talk of them, but they don't really do the classic sell the bad guy.
Next question is, why is there romance in this movie?
Oh, there isn't. There's moments of connection that feel authentic, but there's no romance.
It's very grounded. It's probably real romance.
Yeah.
It's not bad movie romance. This is good movie romance.
Yeah.
Next question is, are we bad people for loving this movie?
Perhaps, but maybe not. It's a good movie. I don't know. It's a great movie. I can't go there. We're not bad people.
No. I don't know if you're ready for this. Does it deserve a sequel?
A sequel? I would absolutely be in on a sequel. I've actually heard that there are rumors and talks of a sequel for this.
Yeah. Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat is what I heard the title of the script was.
Perfect. I'm in.
I don't know if it deserves a sequel. Well, it deserves a sequel. I don't know if it needs one.
Yeah. I don't think it needs one because this movie it's perfect.
It's a risk. It is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a Groundhog's Day scenario, then we say I liked it better when it was a Groundhog's Day scenario. If the sequel is a Groundhog's Day scenario, we might say too much Groundhog's Day.
Exactly.
But you know what? I trusted him with it. It's been 10 years. Emily Blunt's in.
I mean, we're going to watch it.
I mean, yeah. Apparently, Emily Blunt said in 2020 that they had a script that they really liked. And then Doug Liman, like weeks ago, said, we still talk about it all the time. He and Tom Cruise sat down a couple months ago to rewatch this movie. And Doug Liman's take on it was, you know what? Pretty good movie. It was like he was watching a Ron Howard movie.
Yeah. Shots fired at Ron Howard again.
Yep. But if the sequel is going to be called Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat, we probably need to talk about how this movie kind of had two titles, it seemed, when it came out, Edge of Tomorrow and Live, Die, Repeat. Apparently, the marketing department of Warner Brothers has said they never changed the title they just really boosted the Live, Die, Repeat tagline when it was available for rent. But all over the world, it seemed like that was the title.
I remember when the previews were out for this before it came out, and Live, Die, Repeat was all it was. And that was what turned me off to it. I was like, I'm not interested in that movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like that ended up taking away from how good a movie this is.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not a summer blockbuster. I feel like this would be a better release in after Thanksgiving. It was marketed as a summer blockbuster, but it doesn't really feel like a summer blockbuster action movie to me.
Huh. It's more of a Thanksgiving kablooie movie?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. What do you think of the title, All You Need Is Kill?
As a graphic novel, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
As a movie, I think it's pretty stupid.
Yeah. That's what it was called, I think, while they were filming it. And Doug Liman was like, I hate that name for this movie. That's not the movie we're making.
Uh-huh.
I also think Edge of Tomorrow is a pretty stupid name, but it's the one that I associate with this film. And I think this is an amazing movie. So I'm cool with it. Does it deserve a prequel?
No.
No, I'm with you there.
You could probably make one based on Emily Blunt's characters
Oh,
run.
yeah.
But I just think start the timeline where you want this timeline to start. Don't create it and then, we can make all this money, so we're going to do these prequels, which I know how the story ends. That's why I hate prequels. Like, I know how the story ends. Don't tell me how. I don't care about how the story began
Sure.
after I've already watched the movie. So that's why I hate prequels.
Even if you know in the prequel that everybody dies, like Rogue One?
Even in that, I get the premise of that movie. I don't think I've actually seen Rogue One. Yeah, I wasn't interested in that story of how Princess Leia got the message out. Okay, awesome. I'm very anti-prequel, as people should know by now.
Okay, when you said we could go back and see Emily Blunt's time after time, we know that she probably fell in love with Hendrix, whatever his name was.
Hendrix, yeah.
There's a great story there. Now I do wish there was a prequel and that it was going
I'm sorry
back.
I said anything.
It's called The Angel Overdone, and we go through her adventures. Joe, next question is, how can this movie be fixed? AKA, who should be in the remake?
This movie is as close to perfect as you get. So I don't feel like there is really any need to remake it or change any of the casting or anything like that. So my answer is you don't need to fix it.
Yeah, I'm really reaching to try and find an answer to this, but there is something that I think about this movie that we haven't talked about yet. And that is the third act was kind of written and prepared while they were filming. They had no idea how this movie was going to end. And that whole, we're going to get the J Squad and they are going to help us go to the Louvre to get the Omega. On paper, love it. When they have to do the helicopter-y thing, just skimming the water to get over to the Louvre, that feels a little dumb to me. As it's happening, I just think, why are we doing this? This feels like someone bought a sequence at the action sequence store and we're stitching it onto this. There's just something where it's a little bit threadbare. It's a little bit stretching at the seams for me. So if they were going to remake it, I think there would be a better way for them to emotionally get that whole scenario better sewn into the fabric of the movie.
I would agree with that. I think there are a couple moments in that they're moving cars with their mech suits and they're being really loud.
Right.
Apparently, they're very close to the Omega, which is the
great point.
And there's no aliens around you. That's where it veers a little into the great bad movie.
Well,
I would say that sequence definitely. But once they get into the Louvre, then we're back into the regular movie.
100%. And the tell is at the beginning of that sequence, whatever the helicopter-y thing is called, digital flies over the digital camera and makes the digital camera digital shake, which is a total 2009, 2010 A-Team move.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of like, oh boy, I forgot about this part of the movie. So that's a little bit of some CGI-ness happening there. Yeah, there's just something about it. Doesn't quite feel real the way the rest of the movie feels real.
Right. So there's 10 minutes of this movie where it's a great bad movie.
Yes.
The rest of it is a great, great movie.
Our next episode will be a long review of just those 10 minutes.
Okay.
I also feel like there could have been more Brendan Gleeson.
Agreed.
I really like him. Did you know he's only 7 years older than Tom Cruise?
No, that's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? But love Brendan Gleeson. So, all right, Joe, next question. What album is this?
All right, this is going meta for you. And I'm dying to know what your album is too. But This album is the 1965 classic Look at Us by Sonny and Cher, which first single is I Got You, which is
Wow.
the song from Groundhog Day that resets Bill Murray's day. That is what album this is.
Shut down the podcast. We've reached perfection.
Yeah.
This will be, we're going to sign off forever. We should go out on the greatest moment of this podcast. That is the greatest answer you possibly could have said.
Awesome.
Okay, so for me, I was thinking that this is a cover movie to Groundhog's Day.
Okay, nice.
So I was trying to think of cover songs or cover albums that I really like. We live in a time now where there are cover albums, and I don't like them. I usually think that they're like 4 sandwiches shy of a picnic basket. You know, it's like not quite everything it should be. It's a good idea, but not an execution. But, you know, like back in the 60s and 70s, people would just cover each other's songs all the time.
Yeah.
And so I immediately thought of Aretha Franklin, speaking of the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And Aretha Franklin would do this a lot, where she would cover people's songs and would turn it into something entirely her own, which is kind of what this movie does to Groundhog's Day. So, I mean, you could look at Respect. That's written by Otis Redding. She does an incredible cover of A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke on that same album. But the most stark cover that is just so different than the original version and makes it its own thing is her cover of Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, which never officially came out on an album, but it was a single, like it was a #1 single or whatever for her. It's on her greatest hits. Well, first of all, she performed this on her Live at the Fillmore West album, which is incredible. Just got that for my birthday from my in-laws. They might have been at that concert. My in-laws have crazy stories from San Francisco. But she also performed it on the Grammys after Simon and Garfunkel had broken up. But they won like 5 Grammys for that song that night. And she played her cover of it. It is incredible. So everybody should go to our Great Bad Movies music playlist on Spotify and listen to those 2 songs. So not an album. She did record that song during the sessions for one of her albums, but didn't put it on that album. So it's just a song. But, you know, it was the 60s. It was a singles culture. All right, so we usually rate this movie. We've already done this. We don't need to say if it's a great bad movie, good bad movie, okay bad movie, bad movie, or awful bad movie. This is just a great movie.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I was trying to come up with, could I conceivably give this a great bad rating? I can't. It's a great movie.
It is. All right, Joe, we did it.
Yeah, we had the conversation that needed to be had about The Edge of Tomorrow. In fact, probably no one else really needs to talk about this movie after this, if we're being honest.
Yeah, we gave everybody a 10-year window, and then I think we put a lid on it. I think we sealed the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just noticed the time. I am supposed to go do this thing called a battle. I don't know if you've heard of this. I watched a documentary about it on Netflix. And I don't know, this documentary said that it's the Great Redeemer, the fiery crucible in which only true heroes are forged. So I thought, we'll give it a try.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. But yeah, anyway, this has been great. But I have a meeting with the general about some PR. So I hope that goes well.
That absolutely should go well. You know what? That actually totally works for me because do you have a good mattress that you sleep on? I have been having trouble sleeping on this mattress. I'm going to try just a bunch of military bags at Heathrow Airport and see if I can just sleep on that real quick.
I think, I probably get the best night's sleep of your life, honestly, Yeah. That's good because I'm going to meet with my physical trainer today. I hope I don't break my back again.
Ooh, yeah. Well, that's great because there's someone called the Angel of Verdun who's walking straight towards me with a gun in her hand. I don't have a good feeling about this one. So I got to go.
Yeah, good luck with that. Anyway, I have to go meet some friends at the beach. I hope there are not too many people there today. So
I feel like... I just feel weird. I had this weird day today where I was really opinionated about something. And the guy just looked at me and said, "Have you been drinking?"
It's like, obviously.
Yeah. So I'm going to go.
Yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, I got this weird alien blood on me today. I hope there are no side effects from that.
I bet you'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I am going to go Google why Kentucky isn't in America. So I should probably go.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Anyway, lastly, I have a triple feature tonight. I'm watching Groundhog Day, The Edge of Tomorrow, and Palm Springs. So
that's amazing. That works for me. And actually, I'll join you for one of those because tonight I was going to do a triple feature of Groundhog's Day, and Groundhog's Day.
Oh, that seems right.
All right. Well, thank goodness for good summer kablooie movies.
Absolutely.
I'll see you soon.
See you soon.